I recently had a comment from a subscriber as to why porches in the South always seem to be painted blue. I know this one, and I'm sure the commenter knows this one as well, choosing to see if I'd bite at the idea of this video. It's not just a Southern thing, but a superstitious one as well. The practice is one that reaches back deep into our history, and even ties in with the bottle trees that the American South is known for. As with many lasting customs in the American South, though, it's one that was adopted from different cultures. The good old cultural mixing pot we've touched on briefly before in our other videos. As far as the blue porches and bottle trees, this goes back to the Gullah, a unique and still surviving culture, mainly in the lowlands of South Carolina and Georgia, but also found in North Carolina and Florida. Let's touch on the Gullah people and where our blue porches of today come from, as well as the true name of the color, Haint Blue. Everyone loves a good, strange, weird, or bizarre story. Well, welcome to the American South, where dark legends and haunted history lurk around every corner. Where superstition, folklore, and a touch of backwoods magic blend with everyday culture. Some say, in order to survive. This is Dixie After Dark. The Gullah people are a culturally rich group, descending from African American slaves. The Gullah were able to hold on to many of their cultural roots, and many of those still exist today. But that wasn't because of any compassion or leniency from their colonial owners. The Gullah people were poised to survive and thrive, no matter what was thrown at them. It was found early on in the swampy lowlands of South Carolina that the area was nearly perfect for growing rice. Another place that was widely known for its rice production at the time was Central West Africa, particularly in the area of what is today known as Sierra Leone. Brought as slaves to Charleston, South Carolina, specifically for their knowledge in rice cultivation, what became known as the Gullah people were largely kept together due to their specialties. Thus, they were able to keep hold of their traditions and culture better than other enslaved people at the time, that were mixed with others from different regions and tribes of Africa. The rice-growing regions in South Carolina and Georgia were also pretty much cut off from the rest of the American South, which also served to help protect the Gullah culture. The enslaved people in other states were usually kept in smaller groups and had more interactions with whites and their evolving British American culture. But for the Gullah, not so much. They were able to keep their culture alive. Another way fate assisted the Gullah was the spread of malaria and yellow fever. Most scientists agree that these diseases were inadvertently brought to South Carolina with the slave trade, and early white Europeans in the colonies found themselves ravaged by sickness. Karma's a bitch, right? Even better, the Gullah had some level of immunity to these two diseases since it was already endemic in their homeland, and by 1708, South Carolina had achieved a black majority. The same with the rice plantation regions of Georgia by the mid-18th century. The whites feared these new sicknesses and would leave the regions in the rainy spring and summer months, leaving the operation of the rice plantations to rice drivers, the region's name for enslaved overseers. These rice plantations had hundreds of workers, and any new slaves brought to the region would have been from the same ethnic and cultural homelands, as rice cultivation was their specialty. So the Gullah community's sustained cultural identity was constantly being reinforced. Once the American Civil War started, white plantation owners in the marshlands and islands of South Carolina abandoned the area, fearing invasion by the Union blockades that were already rushing to stop Confederate shipping routes. When Union forces arrived on the Sea Islands in 1861, they found the Gullah people, eager for freedom and ready to fight for it. The Sea Islands were the first place in the South where slaves were freed. After the war, the Gullah's isolation from the outside world seemed to increase. Most whites abandoned the area and moved mainland, and the other freed blacks were not willing to work or make home near the disease-ridden rice fields. So the Gullah continued on as normal in rural communities of the marshes and lowlands, thriving, culture untouched, well into the 20th century. So, Haint Blue, where does that come into play? Well, that just scratches the surface of some of the customs and folklore to come from the Gullah people. But I thought it was important to lay some groundwork as to the people and culture it originates from. Although rice was one of the largest crops in the area of the Gullah people, the indigo plant was prominent as well, and they had regular access to it. What became known as Haint Blue is believed to ward off spirits, haint being the historically used African American alternative to haunt. Traditionally painted on porch ceilings and doors, there are two different schools of thought as to why. One is that the blue represents the sky and urges spirits to cross over. The other is that the color mimics water, which spirits were not able to cross in Gullah traditions. No matter which thought you subscribe to, it would do the job of keeping unwanted spirits out of your home. Likewise, blue glass bottles were hung from trees, the blue glass said to trap evil spirits and hags alike. One hag in particular that I've been eyeing for its own video. This tradition of hanging blue bottles from trees led to the advent of the bottle trees, something that can be seen all across the American South. The belief in using blue glass to ward off evil or protect against spirits and curses can be found well into Appalachian communities as well. Some Gullah don't believe the color specifically wards off spirits, but that it has a protective power. The advent of synthetic blue dyes have predominantly taken over, but artisans in today's Gullah communities still revert to using the indigo plant to produce their colors, citing their unique tradition and culture. Today, the use of the traditional color can be found all across the southern U.S., and still carries the name of Haint Blue. Many people still use it for its alleged ability to ward off spirits, and some use it just because it became so prominent in the region. You can probably tell by the owner of the property which direction they lean toward. I, myself, can remember my mom's small porch lined with blue glassware, and she's a weird one. Of course, so am I. I get it honestly, no doubt about that.